pretty good plan. We're good.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. As secretary, I'm here to call the meeting to order. And we need to first elect a chair pro tem before we can elect the chairman. So we need nominations for a chair pro tem. That's what's on your sheet. I'm sorry, guys, who are out there on there. I forgot to send it. I'm not sure you got the nomination list, but I think you know who everybody is, right? Greg, Bob, you got them, right?
Yep.
Okay,
I didn't get a list, but I know who everybody is.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I forgot to send it
That's
to you. Okay, so we need the nominations for a chair pro tem to call the meeting to order. Mary?
I nominate John
Who?
Phyllis.
Phyllis,
Yep.
I second the motion.
Okay. Okay. Motion carried? Everybody in favor? Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So as chair pro tem, in front of you, we have the list of the members of LMAC. And what I'd like to have you do is, if you'd like to raise your hands rather than to have to write it down, that's fine. If everybody's in agreement with raising your hand, is that okay? For the chair, or would you prefer to write it down?
Handwriting is fine with me.
Me too.
Me too.
Okay, great, okay. So, as chair pro tem, I'd like the nominations for the chair of Lake Management. Anne?
I would like to nominate Mary Royko,
Mary Royko?
yes, as for these reasons. She's not new to the committee, so that she will be able to provide continuity. And her experience and dedication are beyond compare. Plus, her attendance at meetings has been probably close to 100%. And for those reasons,
I second the nomination.
Any other nominations or discussions?
Yeah, I'd like to move the nominations be closed.
Okay, it is 7:04. Nominations are closed.
Yeah, to vote on that.
Yes,
To vote on that. That's
Yeah.
a motion.
we have to miss. I thought that Greg did.
Bob.
Bob made the motion.
Didn't Greg second? Oh, he did.
No, Bob actually seconded Mary.
Oh,
Wendy made the motion to close nominations. Now we need a second to close.
Okay,
And Frank just seconded it.
Frank
Frank
just
seconded, now you
Okay.
vote on the closing.
Okay. so is everyone in favor of Mary Whipple?
No,
as chair?
closing the nomination.
Oh, the closing the nominations. Forgive me, guys.
Just ask for
Yes,
a motion, I mean, a motion
Motion.
to close.
to close the nominations.
Do we give enough?
There is a motion on the
Table
table, all
to
in
close
favor of closing
The
nominations.
nominations, say aye.
Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
now can we vote on the nomination?
Yes.
All in favor of Mary Royko as chair of LMAC, would you please have a show of hands?
7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay,
Abstain.
majority votes.
You abstain?
So all present. And 10-0 for one abstention. And the abstention is.
Does Mary get a choice?
Yes, Henry.
I'd like to move that we leave the position of vice chair vacant, at least until the February meeting. We've operated with that chair being vacant for a number of years, and that'll give people an opportunity to consider. Because I don't know that anybody had considered they were going to be doing a vice chair tonight.
Okay, well, Mary is now in charge of the meeting, so you have to call a quorum, make sure that we have the quorum. And then you can make decisions on what you would like to do as chair from that point forward.
Wow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Phyllis. I called meeting open for January of 2026. Welcome to all, in particular, not only the oldies but goodies, but our new members. On the table are two thoughts. Thought number one is, do we want to consider a vice chair tonight? And or delay for a moment, 1 month meeting, and or do we want to consider a secretary? For LMAC. So I would like some input and thoughts, unless Henry, that was a motion, is that
I was making it as a motion, but put it on the table for generally for discussion.
general discussion in terms of, is there any reason plus or minus to wait and or to consider?
One thought, Mary, would be that we need a secretary to do the minutes for this meeting.
I'd like us to get on with the work of the committee and not kick the can down the road on appointments, so I would be in favor. With respect, all due respect to Henry of appointing a vice chair and secretary tonight, and then we're done, and now we get to the business of the committee.
Could I ask what the role of a vice chair would be?
It's a good question, Greg.
Well, normally, the main purpose of the vice chair is to fill in when the chairman is unavailable to run the meeting. So the vice chairman's main job is to run the meeting.
So from a chairperson responsibilities point of view, there were 5 things that the town sent out: leadership guidance, meeting planning, meeting facilitation. I think the main conflict and team management, reporting and representation, the main role or responsibility that Mark just said is meeting facilitation, organizing, running, ensuring that we move forward with the agenda, et cetera. So that to me would be what the vice chair does. So anybody else have an opinion?
It's generally otherwise to fill in and assist the chair in whatever way that they can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are we open for nominations?
Yeah, I would draw my motion.
You withdraw your motion, okay? I would like to nominate Frank Gifford to be vice chair.
I'll second that motion.
I'd like to nominate Mike Scalise.
So first, Frank, you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay, and then,
Okay.
and was there a second on
There's
Thursday?
is there a second for Mike? Yes, Bob seconded.
Bob was the second, I'm just trying to get this before. So
I
Martha nominated-
I seconded Frank Gifford.
And Bob was the second,
And Greg did Mike Scalise.
and Greg did
Nominated Mike Scalise.
not nominate Mike. Mike Scalise. And is there a second to Mike Scalise?
He's an outstanding co-chair.
Yeah, for purposes of having a discussion and a decision, hearing from both of the potential vice chairs, I will second Mike.
So Henry and
Thank
Mike,
you.
do you accept?
I know.
Okay.
You do.
No.
Good.
You
And
said no.
Mike was no.
Okay, so Mike, you've declined.
Correct.
All right, so on the table with Mike declining is nomination of Frank. Any other nominations? Should we call the question? Go for a vote? All those in favor of Frank Gifford being vice chairman?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 again. And 1 abstention, Frank abstained. 10, 0, 1, and 1 abstention was fine. Okay.
Welcome, Frank. I'm great at delegation. And in a similar vein, I'd like to nominate Phil to be secretary. Second,
Okay, hold on, let me write this down. So Martha nominates. or Martha nominates Phyllis. And
Second.
the second was Mary.
mhm.
Mary,
Okay.
second, Phyllis, do you accept?
Yes.
Allows, yes.
That was meek. Phil, you're the heart and soul of this.
Phyllis, yes.
And AI can help you. Where's it one?
Do they go in your pocket?
It's everywhere.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so if there are no other nominations, call the question. All those in favor of Phyllis being secretary of LMAC? Any
Aye,
opposed?
aye.
No abstentions.
10 all around again.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Phyllis, welcome. Back.
And my assistant at the end of the table.
Yes.
Needs kudos because in my absence, Mike does a wonderful job.
That's right.
Yes, he does. And I have to apologize, guys, for those of you that don't know, but I have to be at another meeting at 7 o'clock. Oops. So I'm just trying to.
And it's a higher calling.
It's a higher calling, yes. And Mike will be taking the minutes. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Phil.
I really do
Phyllis, thank you
appreciate it.
so much.
Okay,
Assistance.
no, I'm good.
You know, so I'm good. Okay.
So in calling this meeting to order, Phyllis, you sent out the minutes of the January meeting.
Yeah.
Asking if there are any needs for additions, deletions, changes to the minutes of the January meeting.
December meeting.
Excuse me,
December
the
meeting.
December 2025 meeting. We weren't, we missed you.
I'm gonna saying that.
I was in the 10, I came at 7:10, so I'm not recorded, so I'm not very present.
Well, Frank is in attendance. We will make that. And, any other changes? I had another, I have no comments. You have no comments. And call the question if, the group would vote to accept the December 2025 minutes as is with the change for Frank Dipper being in attendance. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed or any abstentions? Abstaining, 2 abstentions.
You're abstaining.
Yeah, the two new members should abstain. Oh. 3 abstentions.
3 abstentions.
Yeah.
Okay. The next order of business on our agenda, and I think it's so timely, is our guest speaker in the annual report from TRC on our lake, the quality of our lake. We actually have 2 speakers tonight representing TRC. I think most of us are familiar with Carl Nielsen, who's the technical director in Guru for TRC, who now, Carl, what, 3 years? Is this?
With
Yeah,
TRC, yeah, that is true. Yep, 3 years.
And giving the main, and Carl will be here to certainly support and answer any questions relative to the presentation, but giving the main presentation is the person who really knows our lake, because he's here every month. And he's out in that little boat and he's doing all the assessments and the collections of data, et cetera. And then he gets telephone calls from me as the liaison saying, James, what's going on? There's plants here, there's algae there. And he does a terrific job. So let's welcome James Tracy. James, I think you'll be making the presentation. I would ask all of us at any point if there are questions, but to really think about, and James will get to a point, and Carl, about what are the recommendations TRC is making based on the data they're about to present. And I think that this is an important part for us to be able to prioritize what are our main issues, agenda items that we should be focused on based on where the data is versus even a year ago. I have an annual report that arrived yesterday that I will email to the entire LMAC membership. And James, before I forget, I will get the email addresses of all LMAC members to you, so you can allow them to access SharePoint. SharePoint has all Columbia Lake data from back in the eighties and nineties, as well as all TRC's data. So it's a huge compendium of all of the data relative to the lake and the quality of the lake. So let's listen, let's understand what are the ups, what are the downs this year, and what are the things we should be considering as an LMAC group in terms of advising the Board of Selectmen. And if I could just ask, how much time are we allowing the presentation? I believe I told you, Carl, 30 minutes with 15 minutes for Q&A if we need it. So about 45 minutes.
Now,
Great.
James or Carl, are you gonna try to share your presentation?
Yes, if that works for you guys, I can share my
Can see
screen.
if you can bring it up or if I have to allow you. I'm trying to figure that out.
Oh, I know. We'll see.
Oh, good.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Awesome.
we must have allowed that already.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well,
Perfect.
thank you for that introduction, Mary. Like she said, I'm James Tracy. I've been the project manager for Columbia Lake, our monitoring for the past few years, and I have helped out as one of the field staff leaders. So I'm very familiar with the site and the lake. So yeah, I'll start off with 2025. Similar to previous years, we've done monthly monitoring, May through October, and those field visits will take field measurements with a handheld YSI unit, which measures dissolved oxygen, temperature, specific conductance, and we also take turbidity and pH readings. We also take lab samples at the surface and bottom of the deep hole location, as well as the inlet and outlet, mainly focused on phosphorus and nitrogen. We also take algae and zooplankton samples at the deep hole. And then also in 2025, we did another round of aquatic plant mapping. And this year, which was different than previous years, we did some bathymetry mapping. We did a little bit more intensive sediment sampling, and we also did some storm drain sampling in October. Just get this. So before I get started on 2025, I brought in some of the historic data that Mary had sent us previously. I've added our data to it, just kind of build upon it. And so this is the historic phosphorus levels in Columbia Lake. The red line is represented by the bottom samples at the deep hole, and then the black line down here is representative of the surface samples. So you can see that in the bottom samples, there are occasional spikes that have happened historically. Um, when one of our first samples in 2022 had one of those high spikes as well. But the surface samples have remained pretty consistent over the past 30 or so years now. So that's good. This is just looking at the data that we've collected from 2022 to 2025, so the past 4 years. This this trend line is for the bottom samples here, and you can see it is slightly trending down, which is good. But again, I believe that that's mainly due to this really high sample our first sample that we collected. If we didn't have that really high reading, it would probably be pretty steady, which is all right as well. Here are the just looking at the surface samples from 2022 to 2025. You can see it's trending in the downward as well, which is good. And then in our first sample in 2025, May was actually our lowest reading that we've collected to date, which was about 4 micrograms per liter or 0.004 milligrams per liter. This is the sucky disk depth, which is representative of water clarity. It's kind of like a little black and white disk that we lower down into the water column, and we just kind of record when we lose sight of it. And on this, there's a lot of data here. It goes all the way back to 1981. Um, and you can see that this line is actually ever so slightly just trending upward, which is representative of actual declining water quality, because if it goes up, it's showing it's closer to zero. We did have one of our lowest readings, or even one of the lower readings in the past 30 years, in our October sample, which was at 1.5 meters. Um, so yeah, here's just looking at the 2022 to 2025. This low reading, we kind of looked back into some of the algae results that we got over the course of 2025. And I believe that this low reading is likely due to an algal bloom, but not like a harmful blue-green algal bloom. It's more of a diatom algal bloom based off of the lab results. And diatoms kind of they'll flourish and kind of really pick up their abundance in the fall when the lake is mixed and it starts turning over. But other than that October uh, Secchi depth, all of our readings were at 3 meters or greater. This is just looking at some of our plant maps over the past couple of years. The plant map on the left here was from 2023, looking at cover. And then the plant map on the right was the one we put together for 2024, I mean 2025. The plant community has remained pretty consistent. There are some dense patches in various coves. And this is pretty typical of lakes in New England. Different areas may experience high or low densities year to year for various reasons. And just to touch upon water clarity versus water quality. So items that could affect water quality could be toxins, which are produced by blue-green algae or pollutants that may get into the water. Also, bacteria can adversely affect the water quality. Water clarity can be affected by things like algae, nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen, which ultimately feed the algae. And then runoff. You can see this picture on the right was from 2024 when we did a bit more extensive inlet sampling. The lake's kind of over here on the left, and you can see there's considerable amount of sand and debris running into the inlet. We also have a picture of just an area where there was some dense algae. Water clarity could also be affected by what's known as tannins, which is just kind of like decomposing organic matter such as leaves, which I haven't seen too much of in at Columbia Lake, in my opinion. I feel like the clarity is pretty good. Tannins are kind of like that dark brown color that you sometimes see. All right, and so to get into 2025 sampling, this figure on the left is our sample location. So you can see our deep hole area right here. So this is where we'll take our surface and bottom samples. We have the outlet just north of that, and then we have the inlet over here off of Erdoney Road. And then we have our storm drains that we sampled during the wet weather event, which is known as Storm Drain 8 off of Woodland Terrace, and Storm Drain 2 off of Erdoney Road. This is our temperature profiles that we collected in 2025. So when we go out to the deep hole, we'll take our YSI and take temperature readings all the way down to the bottom. You can see in May and September and October, definitely October, it's pretty much a straight line that's representing the lake is pretty well mixed. Little bit starting to get stratified for May and September. You can see it's starting to get mixed here. And then in June, July, and August, you can see these big swings in the temperature, and that's representative of the lake being stratified. So the warmer water is mainly at the top, and then once you get below a certain depth, it really starts to get cooler. Whoop. Here's the dissolved oxygen temperature profile. They they do follow a similar pattern, but a bit more sporadic. You can see once you get down below about 5 meters, you start to see the really low dissolved oxygen. Um, the reading in October, I suspect that the sensor may have been submerged in the sediment for that last reading. I think it was probably a little bit more straighter than that. I'm not 100% sure, but I would suspect that. Here are the lab results that we collected at the surface and bottom. Um, you can see this column right here is all of our phosphorus readings in milligrams per liter. We did have the highest reading came in August at the bottom location. July was also just below that, but at least at the surface, everything remained below that 0.025 milligrams per liter, which we try to stay under. Um, Another thing I just wanted to point out too is that when we look at the total nitrogen, you can see these and nitrite and nitrate. These are all non-detects right here, so we're really not picking up any of that type of nitrogen. All the nitrogen that we're detecting is mainly in the TKN form, which is like organics. So you can see the total nitrogen for the in-lake is is exactly the same as the TKN. So in 2025, the average total phosphorus concentration was 0.014 at both the surface and bottom. And that average of 0.014 was slightly lower than the past 2 years averages, which were 0.015 in 2023 and 0.018 in 2024. As I mentioned, the highest total phosphorus value was found in August at the lake bottom, which was 0.028 milligrams per liter. And then total nitrogen only varied slightly in 2025, and it ranged from 0.26 milligrams per liter to 0.48 milligrams per liter at both of the surface and bottom locations. The sucky disk depth readings ranged from 1.5 meters in October and to a maximum of 4 meters in July. And then the average sucky disk depth was 3.1 meters, which did slightly increase from the previous year when it was 2.9 meters. So you gained the average increased by 0.2 meters. Here is the inlet and outlet data that we collected for phosphorus and nitrogen, as well as all of our field measurements. You can see that we did start to pick up a little bit of the nitrate coming in from the inlet or leaving at the outlet. We also take discharge measurements to get the cubic feet per second, either coming into the lake or leaving the lake. So in 2025, the total phosphorus concentrations averaged 0.023 at the inlet, while averaging 0.020 milligrams per liter at the outlet. This is a decrease in the average total phosphorus concentration from 2024, when the average was 0.027 milligrams per liter. So decreased by about 0.004. and it actually increased the average concentration at the outlet from 2024. So there's more phosphorus laden water leaving the lake we detected in 2025. And then total nitrogen concentrations ranged from 0.24 milligrams per liter at the outlet to uh, in June to 0.75 milligrams per liter at the inlet in July. This is some of our algae and zooplankton data. You can see here's our table that we kind of put together that represents the blue-green algae versus all the other algae groups in the sample. And so you can see that this August sample had the highest density of blue-green algae, and even though it was, a fourth of the sample, the concentration was only at 1,600 cells per milliliter. And the Connecticut state standard is 20,000 cells per milliliter. So we didn't have any samples that exceeded that threshold. I think in last year we may have had like one sample in August that did exceed that. But again, in 2025, we didn't have any samples that exceeded that threshold or that standard. So for our plant mapping, these are some of the more common plant species you may be seeing out there. This picture on the left here is Elodia or Western waterweed. This middle photo is naiad species. And then the photo on the right here is clasping leaf pondweed. So here, again, I know I showed this cover map earlier. Here it is again.
You don't have to.
Is there a question?
No, go ahead, James.
Sorry. And then the map on the right is the biovolume. So you can kind of think of the cover map is like a bird's eye view. So you're looking down at a particular location and seeing if you're looking down, how much of that area is covered by plants. And then the biovolume is kind of more like how much plants occupy the water column, kind of like a fish eyes view, you could say. This table is the species that we encountered out there. So when we look at the overall cover maps compared to 2024, there was a slight increase. We detected about 2 acres in 2025, and then similar to the past 4 years, slender naiad, Najas flexus, and clasping leaf pondweed, Potamogeton perfoliatus, continue to be the most abundant and common species that we encounter out there. We did notice a few areas of dense western waterweed, Lodia, which is mainly in like the western portions of the lake. So here is the bathymetry map that we were able to produce this year, which to our knowledge is the first detailed bathymetric map for Columbia Lake. Um, by doing this, we were able to figure out that 129 acres, or about 84 million gallons, have water depths that are 20 feet or greater. So if you see my cursor there, here's the 20-foot contour. If you follow that all the way around, that's about 129 acres. And these are the depths that will be susceptible to phosphorus release from the bottom sediments under low oxygen or anoxic conditions, mainly when the lake is stratified. If you think back to the temperature and dissolved oxygen profiles, so like June, July, and August, those are the times you're most likely to see that phosphorus release, which is why in our samples, that's when we sometimes see those spikes. Um, and these susceptible depths represent approximately 46% of the total volume of Columbia Lake. So that's just under half the total volume, which is a pretty large amount.
Large, what was it? What did you say? Pretty large one.
Large mass of water.
Large amount, sorry.
No.
Large amount. Some now.
Um, this map over here on the right is the areas where we took sediment samples. We took 6 of them. We targeted areas with the greater water depths. The testing was completed for total phosphorus, iron-bound phosphorus, and loosely sorbed phosphorus. And this type of analysis is helpful to understand whether the phosphorus in the sediment is going to be readily available to interact with the water column. So here are the sediment results. You can see the iron-bound here, loosely sorbed, are relatively low. They actually represent less than 1% of the total phosphorus in all the grab samples. So if you were to add the iron-bound and the loosely sorbed and divide that by the total, that would give you the percentage. So it was all pretty low amounts. Um, and even our total phosphorus uh, results were lower than what we expected compared to what we collected in 2024. I think we collected 1 sample in 2024, and I believe that amount was like maybe just over 1,000. So all these were surprisingly low. Um, the total phosphorus ranged from 200 milligrams per kilogram at the said 1 location to a maximum of 385 at the said 5 location. And then if the average for all of them was about 283. And then just to put into perspective, total phosphorus concentrations above 600 milligrams per kilogram are considered polluted for freshwater sediments in New England. This is the stormwater sampling results that we conducted in October. So yeah, as you can see, all these readings, or at least at the storm drains, were relatively high compared to anything we detected in lake. But if you look at the discharge amount, it's really low compared to if you were to compare it to like the inlet during that same situation. So it's only discharging 0.02 cubic feet per second. Um, so these storm drains that we sampled were lower than what we collected for both phosphorus and nitrogen compared to 2024. I think we had some in 2024 that were close to zero point 0.1. So these were lower, but they were still elevated. And we also completed our final round of E. coli sampling in August of 2025, where so yeah, this sample was just slightly above the state threshold. I think it's like 275. And so that's significantly lower than what we detected in 2024 as well. I think we had at least 1 sample that was like in the thousands last year, and so both of the inlet was, well below the state threshold, and the this one was just above, but lower than everything that we collected in 2024. And so for recommendations for 2026, we would recommend that you continue the monthly monitoring and sampling for total phosphorus at the inlet, the outlet, and the surface and bottom. We'd also recommend that you drop the monthly nitrogen sample as well as the phytoplankton and zooplankton samples and reduce that to just once a year or twice a year, July and August, when we are seeing those potential phytoplankton or algae spikes. And we could also, if there was a time that you're seeing a bloom going on and you know that we're going to be out there later this month, we can always just grab a sample bottle and grab a sample if you want us to. But just to save some costs on your end, especially with the nitrogen, we're really not seeing that being too impactful in lake. So it'd be something to consider possibly dropping that. And then some other,
James?
yes?
I'm sorry, it's Muffy Carter. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but maybe you're gonna get to it, but if you're at the point where you're making recommendations, you've presented a ton of data. Most of us haven't seen those data before, and it was actually pretty hard to see on the screen. So could you just kind of recap the net of all of that so that we have an understanding before we start to talk about recommendations going forward, what the sum total of what you saw was relative to phosphorus? I thought I heard it actually hasn't increased, if anything, it's slightly decreased. If I got that right, but anyway, could you?
Yeah,
And
yeah, no, that is correct. We definitely did not see an increase from previous years. We saw a slight decrease.
did
Um,
that surprise you, or you expected that? Or I'm just trying to put this information into better context, that's all.
I'll add a layer to that too. Are the differences at all statistically relevant?
Differences in the
The
year to
readings from
year.
24 to 25.
I mean,
Is it in the margin of error,
Yeah.
the measurements?
yeah, we didn't run like any statistic analysis on them, so I can't say for certain if they're statistically different, but just looking at averages, in some cases they were lower. I know that, like I said, the outlet increased, but the in-lake phosphorus concentrations decreased slightly from the past few years. Um, but just because they decreased, it's definitely still a good idea to monitor those and make sure that they're not increasing. Um, so
It's, yeah, it's just, I'll jump in, James. It's just variation that you would expect, interannual variation in how the testing is done. And, some years are drier, some years are wetter, you have more stormwater or less, and that'll affect the in-lake conditions. Temperature can affect how quickly the lake sets up and becomes stratified and how quickly it becomes unstratified in the fall can bring up that high phosphorus concentration bottom water sooner. So then we catch it in our sample, which then could raise or lower the number depending on how it sets up. So it's just interannual variability and a very small change. The decrease was just fractions of a milligram per liter, not a significant move in either direction. In the
So
lake
your
in
gut is
general, sorry,
so your gut feeling is that it pretty much just stayed the same.
it just stayed the same. I would say the only thing that was surprising to us when you look at the bigger set of data, which is that sort of 1982 to current, there's only been a couple times in the history of the lake where Secchi discs were 1.5 meters, which is pretty low. And we captured one of those during the month of October this past year. So that was surprising to us because it hadn't been that low in its history, certainly not since we've been doing it. So that was concerning. But then when you look at the average for the year, it was actually not a bad year in total. So again, we looked at the algae weren't problem algae, and it was just an artifact of when the turnover occurred and how our sampling coincided with that fall turnover. So, it's interannual variability.
Didn't I understand at one point that the water clarity is a double-edged sword? That having good water clarity actually can help promote plant growth?
Yeah, and it can, not so much it all depends on when that clarity occurs. If you've got, you know, problems in the fall when the plants are already up at the surface, it really doesn't affect the plant growth too much. But if you had poor clarity in the spring, or if your overall clarity was improving, year to year. Over time, you can expose deeper sediments to sunlight, and therefore plant growth could germinate down at deeper depths than it had historically. But again, you won't see a change year to year. It takes several years of good water quality to enhance the plant growth.
Thank you. I guess I was just overall looking for kind of a summary of all those data and what you're, I know you have recommendations going forward, but what the data are saying to you. Again, I think we've said for phosphorus, it's within the margin of error, it hasn't really increased, but it's somewhere within the margin of error, whether it's actually trending downward or not. The Seshi measurements are showing less clarity. And there was in one,
No, just
one,
one.
it's in one measurement anyway.
Yeah.
You had
Yeah.
seen that before. And then the plant mapping, you're seeing, you said there's 2 acres more of plant growth, is that, did I get that right? So
Yeah,
that's
you do.
increasing? Is that enough to matter, to worry about, or that would be expected?
No. Yeah, there's a lot of interannual variability in plant growth. And again, it's a function of some of the things that you folks are doing. I understand there's a little bit of raking going on, and that may be helping to reduce some of the plant growth in some areas. You get patches of plants that'll crop up one year and then they don't appear for several years, and there's cycles to the different species of plants within a lake. And so some years you might get more of one species and less of another just because they're competing for the space each year. And the conditions one year are a little different than the conditions another year, and therefore it favors one species over another. So there's shifts. I think in the past we've seen more plant growth in prior years, up to 50 acres, I believe, and we've seen less plant growth in prior years. So it moves quite a bit. Like 2 acres is pretty. I mean, that's the margin of error in our mapping techniques more than anything else. So I think the big takeaway from this is that the lake hasn't changed significantly since 2024, and the data that we're collecting is good data from the perspective of long-term data collection. It's monthly data. A lot of lakes do not see 6 months of sampling every summer, so you've got a really good data set to understand the lake, and when things change, you have enough data, you're collecting enough other variables to take a look at it and try to understand why it's changing, and then you can react to it accordingly. But this year really didn't have anything that was needing a reaction. There were not the big blooms that you had I think even last year. So it was a pretty benign year, which is what you want when you're managing a lake. You don't want a lot of things to get worked up over. And there's still the stormwater issue that's going to continue to be something that the town can work on to resolve. The bottom line is, from the sediment sampling, the amount of phosphorus coming out of the sediment and interacting with the water column is lower than what we had modeled and anticipated. Once we got the real data, it's not as concerning as we had thought. So the impact on water quality from that sediment is less than we had thought, which is good. But it means that the counter to that is that if the sediment less, then the surface flow is the bigger driver of things. So the stormwater and the inlet coming in and the groundwater coming in from the shorelines are the driving factor for this lake. And so you just need to make sure that the water coming in is clean, and that'll keep the lake the way it is for as long as it can be the way it is. So we like the way it is. We want to keep it that way. We just have to keep the water coming in clean. And the cleaner it is, the better it'll be for the lake, and the less phosphorus will accumulate in that sediment over time. So
So the net is, this is good news, this is good news. The lake hasn't.
Particularly for the bottom sampling.
Right, right. I have
Yep.
well, I can park the questions, but later, or kind of a very main question. I'll just throw it out there, you don't have to answer it now, because I don't want to derail your presentation, but the lake froze over last year for the first time in, what, several years, 6, 7 years, and it's frozen again this
Yeah.
year. Does that have any impact on anything?
it does. Yep. There's two things that when a lake freezes over, there's less chance for you end up with a stratified winter condition, which is basically the wind doesn't disrupt the lake and cause circulation to happen. And so as a result, you get, believe it or not, the colder water at the surface and the warmer water down deep. And that's enough to create that stratified condition, which can release nutrients out of the bottom sediment, which your bottom sediments aren't as bad as we had thought. So that's not a big problem for you. And then the other thing that ice cover does, especially if you get snow on that ice cover, is it limits the light penetration to the bottom. And so you end up getting less weed growth, or the weed growth starts later in the spring than it might otherwise. Because if the lake's open, the light gets down to the bottom. And as soon as the water starts to warm up, those seeds from the prior year start to germinate and move, start to grow plant. So the ice cover keeps the water cold and it keeps it shaded to some degree, depending on the nature of the ice, obviously.
Thank you, Carl.
Yep.
Sorry, James, to derail you, but I appreciated all those comments.
It's all right. No, this was the last slide anyway, so it's fine to get into questions now. But yeah, just some things that we added into the report under the recommendations section, where like an early detection and rapid response plan for things such as algal blooms, oil spills, or any new potential invasive species that may be noticed. Pilot low dose alum treatment, septic system seepage survey, and then a suspected oil spill or PAH groundwater investigation. And that
So,
was it.
James, thank you. Carl, thank you. I have a couple questions. I would suspect, and please build on this, you're suggesting, and I saw this in the annual report, a pilot of the low dose alum treatment. Phosphorus sounds good. Better than maybe we anticipated from the modeling, and the model showed that we were seeing some increase in the phosphorus load. Why would we consider piloting the low dose alum treatment now?
You don't have to do it now. It's one of those things that if you can identify it, understand it, have an idea of what the costs are, you can have that as a tool in your toolbox in the future. It also lets you understand the costs and solutions that might be available to you. But if you can actually resolve the stormwater issues coming in and solve the problem of the phosphorus loading, you'll never need to do the alum treatment. It gives you that sort of understanding of where you are and where you're going and what things could be done. I don't think you need to do it in the upcoming year, but it's an option that I think if you were to try it, you'd see you really like the way the lake looks. And it would benefit for a couple of years, which would be good. But
Would a pilot,
there's a cost to it, right?
would a pilot be some kind of lake-wide treatment, or where you would pick, let's say, the inlet and create a water flowing through a phosphate, through an alum filter of some sort before it came into the lake?
So,
No, it would be a lake-wide treatment at a very low dose. So there's there's different ways to apply alum. And one of the things that your lake has going for it, well, two things really, is it's got that large volume of water. And because of that large volume of water relative to its total surface area, it's deep basically. The amount of flushing that happens is it's basically flushes just under once a year, basically. So it takes a whole year to push the volume of water in your lake through. And because of that, you can do a treatment of the surface water, with alum, strip out the phosphorus, and essentially benefit the lake for an entire year. And then it's going to still take longer for that flushing to replace all of the clean water that you've created with new stormwater and new inputs from the inlet. And so that's the benefit of an alum treatment, is it's basically stripping the phosphorus from the water that's currently in your lake and settling it down to the bottom and locking it up permanently. The added
Yeah, that was gonna ask you that. It is a permanent lockup. When the alum
It
takes
is.
it down, it just doesn't become part of the sediment that could then be released again. It's locked up.
No. And in fact, one of the nice things about, we have some lakes we manage with low dose, they never wanted to pay for a full dose or a high dose alum treatment at your lake. You don't really need it because your sediment's not in rough shape, but it would benefit you. You're probably looking at about a 35 to 40 grams per meter squared treatment, which is a really low dose when it comes to a high dose alum treatment, if so to speak. But for your low dose, you're looking at 1 to 2 grams per meter squared. So it's a tiny fraction of the alum being placed, because the focus isn't to lock up just the sediment, it's just to clean out the water that's currently in the lake. But we have lakes that we do those 1 to 2 gram per meter squared doses annually or every other year. And the benefit is cumulative. So the 2 grams that you add this year and the 2 that you add next year are 4. It's additive. And ultimately, if you do it for 10 years in a row, you've now added 20 grams per meter squared, which is halfway to what your full dose would have been anyway. And so there's that added benefit of stripping the water of the phosphorus, but then the added benefit of basically that material settling on your bottom layer of sediment and locking it down over time. So
The one concern that I've had in other bodies of water that I've sat in similar positions on was that alum treatments after an algae bloom could result in precipitating the phosphate out, starving the algae, killing the algae, having the algae decay, having an oxygen decline as a result, and a fish kill. And so we're talking at levels of alum treatment or time of year or whatever, so that kind of adverse cycle wouldn't happen.
yeah, we recommended in our report May for the treatment. And so if you treat in May, there's really no algal bloom occurring. And you're not really treating an algal bloom with an alum treatment anyway. It's not the right way to treat an algae bloom. So we would, you're treating the water to remove phosphorus. The algae is not there it doesn't have to be there when you treat. So we treat in May when the water is, 50 degrees and there's no blooms. There's plenty of oxygen in the water. The water's still cold. And so that's the time of year to do it. And if it's not stratified, all the better. Once the lake's stratified, you tend to be treating the upper layer and not the bottom layer. So we want to treat it all, so that dose is applied in May, and it allows the alum to settle down through the water column all the way to the bottom, stripping the phosphorus as it goes. So the alum is actually heavier than water, and as it moves through the water, it creates a a white precipitate flock, and that flock is more dense than water, and it picks up phosphorus as it settles, and the lake will look fantastic. So,
Carl,
yeah.
how would that, low dose alum treatment compare to using a phos log, for example? At the inlet?
Yeah, the phos logs are, there's some issues with the phos logs. The amount of phos log that you would need to put in to make your system work is gonna, with that inlet being as big as it is, and as much flow as it has, you'd have to be putting out quite a few phos logs and changing them routinely or adding new ones routinely. But it's the same idea. I know in Massachusetts the phos logs are considered impediments or barriers to fish passage. And so you need to be able to make sure that Fish and Wildlife's okay with you putting them in.
Yeah, fish that spawn at that inlet.
Yeah. And so that's just a concern. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just you got to plan accordingly. But it's the same idea. The difference is with the pilot dose alum treatment, you're putting the alum where you want it, when you want it there at the right time of year, and you're getting the results you're doing it in a way that you know what you're doing, and you're getting you're planning it and getting the results that you're paying for. With the phos logs, they only strip out stuff that's coming into the lake at that location. So you'd have to have them in the storm drains. You'd have to have them in the inlet. You'd have to have them in the ground. There's nothing treating the groundwater coming in.
We likely to face limited budget, limited resources, so we got to be strategic here. And
Yeah.
if, as we've seen, the problem seems to be the inflow. And one of your recommendations was a septic study of some sort, which I think is right on to the concept of what's coming into the lake. But we also have the ongoing concern about storm drains and so forth. So we may be better to be putting what limited resources we have against doing something more about stormwater coming through storm drains and so forth. And so what can we consider to be pilot projects for that? Is more study needed, or can we talk about building different kind of collection cisterns, or different types of riprap on the ones that are open, and whether riprap is better than a through pipe? There are certain things that we would probably be helpful here to know whether we should be getting rid of our riprap and putting pipes in with a storm culvert at the top to have a settling thing, or whether having it run off the road and down a riprap trail into the lake is better.
Carl, let me build on that. I know in the annual report, which you'll be receiving tomorrow, you did talk about stormwater best management practices, which I think Henry is alluding to. That's part of it. There are green best management, and there are mechanical or structural. So in the sake of time and understanding, instead of getting into depth on that, it is in the annual report, and it is something I think we can build on. My quick question is, and I know it won't be probably a quick answer, but there are several areas around the lake, even though we say we have 11 acres, 2 more acres of plant growth. Last year, I believe it was 11 acres. Now that would take us to 13 acres. And you have said it in years past, 25 or greater is not so good. So we're in okay shape. However, it's where it's at. And we have, yes, some pilot programs to get rid of some of the native plant. Why is there so much density in coves very near a lot of properties? And can we do anything about that other than the programs that we are gonna put in place, we piloted this year, we'll put in place again next year, which was cutting, which you are aware of. I just think that that's a squeaky wheel, that, if you kayak around this lake, 50% of 190 docks may have plants growing around.
board, yeah.
Sorry for the length of that, but, kind of as the
Yeah.
last question.
Well, there are other options besides harvesting or raking the leaves out, the weeds out. A lot of lakes work with herbicides, and that's another approach that can be used. It's very economical and very quick and effective. Yeah, herbicides.
Is there a certain
Beyond
time of
that,
year that has to be done? No, you'd have to do that early in the season, correct?
you have to do it annually, so it becomes something that you treat just like raking. When you go in with the rake, you're pulling out the plants and you're preventing them from dropping seeds. The same thing happens with the herbicides. You put them in and treat typically in June or July, before the seeds drop, and that'll take care of them for that year, and it will reduce their abundance the next year, but you'll have to still hit them again. Beyond that, you can use an actual mechanical harvester, which is perfectly acceptable for the weeds that you have in that lake. They don't spread through fragmentation for the most part. They're spreading through seeds. And so if you go in and hire a guy there's plenty of people that do that work. It generally is running about $3,500 an acre. So it's not cheap, whereas herbicides might be $200 an acre. Just for, comparison. $200 an acre for herbicide,
What are the,
$3,500 for harvesting.
the herbicide approach, what are the, chemical health risk factors?
There's no health risks to humans, no health risks to aquatic life when they're applied by a licensed herbicide applicator in the state of Connecticut. So there's no risk. They wouldn't allow it if there was any harm to aquatic life. They wouldn't allow it. Those herbicides don't get approved.
Would that require permitting?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Connecticut DEEP permit that's required. It's a $75 fee, I believe. So it's a relatively small permit.
So offline, as we consider options for this nuisance native plant, I think is what we've been calling it. I'll gather more information from you to share with the commission so that, we can start to at least discuss, debate, and come up with consensus as to what's the best approach.
Yeah, we worked with a water supplier, Aquarian Water in southwestern Connecticut, and they looked at diver pulling, hand harvesting, and then mechanical harvesting and herbicides, and they sort of tackled their weed problem with 3 different or 4 different approaches as pilot studies to see which one would work best for them. And then they made those decisions.
What'd they go with?
Well, they went with the diver assisted suction harvesting,
Good.
which is roughly the $3,500 an acre cost too. So, but it's a function of really how many acres you want to manage and how you want to do it and what your results and end point will be, and what kind of budgets you have. So if we work with lakes that want to do harvesting every year and they end up going and buying a harvester and doing it themselves. A harvester will cost you $200,000, but if you've got someone that wants to drive it, it can be an economical approach over the long run. So
Frank knows I want to drive the harvester.
Yeah.
Question.
But I did have a question. I was just wondering if there was, if you got identify one or two other peer lake communities, right? That you would say, oh, this stuff sort of matches up to what we're experiencing with Columbia Lake.
Sure.
What you've experienced.
Yeah, we're working down in Guilford, Connecticut, right now, and in fact, there's a presentation coming up. I don't know if you guys are aware, but there's what is it? The New England,
Or Northeast.
thank
Oh,
you,
yeah.
Northeast Association of Aquatic Biologists. And they're doing a presentation. They have a conference in Connecticut, February 4th and 5th, I believe. Where you can actually hear about a lot of the work that's going on in Connecticut, lakes and ponds. It's really all over New England, but it's pretty well attended. The regulators go, other municipalities go, and then consultants go as well, state agencies, etc. And so there's going to be a talk that I'm co-author on the work that's been done down at Lake Quanapog in Guilford. And so they've been managing native plants, well, some non-native plants, but both native and non-native plants using 2 different herbicides over the last 3 years. And the results have been very good in that they have gotten rid of the ones that they don't want, and they've kept all the native plants that they wanted to keep, all the desirable plants, including they had threatened or rare species present in the lake that NDDB, Natural Diversity Database, folks at Connecticut were concerned with, and they allowed the use of the herbicides, and the results have been fantastic to the point where we're going to present it at a talk about how we got rid of some of the bad plants while keeping all the good plants. And the talk is being given by a gal from CAES, the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. She did the independent monitoring. I designed the treatment program, and another company has been doing the treatment. So it's kind of a 3-part team effort with the town to get all that work done. But they're very happy with the results. So.
Terrific. I know it's on Muffy's calendar. I think she's attending.
Oh, good. Well, I hope to see you there.
It is on my calendar.
Which means I'm probably driving.
Oh, good. Well, I'll be presenting another talk there as well.
So there will be some follow-up questions that we have, and I think once you review the annual report. But just in conclusion, things look good.
Very good.
Things are certainly staying steady. Our biggest issue, and I think you said it was 85% of the issue, was stormwater drain or stormwater and rainfall, but mostly stormwater. And we need to follow up in terms of what your annual report suggests in terms of stormwater best management practices to continue for things to look good. Okay.
Yep. Agreed.
Final questions?
Do we have what we need, since it's budget season, to be getting figures into Mark to get into the budget to your recommendations?
Your suggestions are in the annual report, but we can also, Carl, will get a contract from you for the annual water quality. And then
Yeah, we can do that, and I think James is pretty close to pulling the trigger on that too.
Yeah,
So,
and last year we did it by project or task. The normal, what we always did annually in terms of water quality assessment, and then certain tasks that then we can LMAC recommend to the Board of Selectmen.
okay.
Try a FOS.
Where's cost?
Yeah, can we get costs for some of these future ideas? Your ballpark numbers, they don't have to be
It's
exact.
in the annual report.
Well, that's what I was asking. Is it in, it is in there?
Yeah, like the animal treatment, I think was 60,000. Greg, I'm sorry, you have a question?
No worries. I just had one quick question for Carl and James. We had some pretty good success this summer keeping geese off the lake. And I was just wondering if when, if we continue to do this and have success, would that have any noticeable data in what you're
Yeah.
sampling?
Well, it definitely will, because I don't know if you've heard this stat before, but 1 kilogram of phosphorus per goose per year. And
Mhm.
so your budget, I forget the exact number, but it's something on the order of 250 or 275 kilograms a year is what your lake's receiving. 280, thank you. So if you can keep 5 geese away, you've just cut 5 kilograms of phosphorus out of your loading for the year. So
Here, here.
Okay.
I don't know how many geese you're scaring off, but if you're scaring off a flock of 30, that's a
Yeah,
pretty sizable change in phosphorus loading.
we had
Find a better year.
zero for some period of
Well,
time,
we thought we could have done it
but
half.
usually we're chasing 30 to 60,
Yeah,
in
so
migration times,
40 to
but we've
60.
been able to keep them off the lake during the
yeah,
summertime.
well then that's heroic effort right there. That's definitely worth doing.
Okay.
And it's if you can manage it, it's easy and you'll see the results right away. It's a benefit to the lake for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Yep.
next steps is I'll follow up, Carl, with you on some of the recommendations. We'll provide that to the team. And we'll get the annual report out to everyone. Can't thank James, you enough, and Carl for all you've done for us for the 3 years and collecting this data and continuing it so that we have a good understanding that we're in pretty good shape. And yet,
Yep.
we need to continue action steps to make sure we stay in good shape. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, and hats off to Greg and Mike, who single-handedly wrestled down the phosphorus load on the last. They were driving those boats around with the green hats on all day long. That's awesome.
Well,
Very
glad
new
it's
hats.
helping, right? That's the key. Not just poop in yards, but poop in the lake.
Yeah. So, a couple of things, certainly let me move on and, I will ensure that we get into the minutes with, Mike, I'll work with you. What are our next action steps? What do we have to do? And it may lead to something a little bit, later in the meeting, but let me go on to the agenda as is. Audience of citizens? Hi, citizens. Anything that you'd like to share? Awesome, thank you for joining us. Communications.
Yeah, name. They signed in.
Mike,
Oh, okay, Bill knows what I'm talking about. Oh, that they signed in. It's okay.
Next on the agenda, it says communications. Is there anything that any of you have in terms of thoughts or communications for this meeting? If not,
Yes,
oh, Ann, hi Ann.
all kinds of things appear in my inbox. And one of them, this afternoon was a online presentation that you can sign up for on January 27th. And it's the report of Twin Lakes.
Twin Lakes, yes, I do love.
Salisbury.
Yes.
I assumed you're gonna send, I can send it out to the
Yes.
rest of you all that.
I just already signed it. I'm already
Just
registered.
share that.
Yeah.
I signed up for it.
As did two of us, but I will get it out.
Yeah.
To the community, and these are, one of the things that I value, and I think that everyone here on the commission values is we need to be educated. And there are so many forums that are coming out, in particular, the Connecticut Federation of Lakes are sponsoring these types of Zoom, podcasts, et cetera. Not only you have to attend or in person, which I think can give us perspectives, particularly our consultants just said, hey, you gotta have an emergency development, rapid response plan ready to go. if we were to have room. In Twin Lakes, I think that particular conference will be instructed in that way.
Right, and I just wanted to comment that the friends of my pond have applied for, once again, a grant to treat the invasives in my pond. So if they are awarded this grant, something will happen there. And this commission, they wish to watch that.
Kind of to be on alert. Terrific. Is that a town grant or state application?
It's a application by friends, but the town has aided them in applying.
Awesome.
And there'll be costs and they're budgeting for that. Because part of the application requirement is an analysis of the weeds as they exist now. But we couldn't do it until they start growing in the spring, so it'll delay their chances of getting the grant.
Is TRC involved in that? Yeah, okay, TRC, because Carl mentioned to me that he had spoken to someone about Monopond.
Yes, so I think they're gonna be requesting the funding to do that plant survey that's needed for the grant.
There had been a plant survey done about
Years
years
ago, it
ago.
was too old.
Sure.
They had supplied that on the last round, but it was too old.
Do they know they have invasive species in there?
Oh,
Yes.
You can
I
walk
think
in.
last count was there's like 7 different types of invasive species. I identified. Monopod is choked. It's choked hardcore.
Yeah, not good.
We agreed here a few meetings ago that the LMAC should join the Connecticut Federation of Lakes. That's right. But I don't think it's happened yet, so you might wanna
I'll make
note
a
of that.
point to
Or minute that, Mike, so we get that done. CLA belongs, and so. And Ian obviously is a member, and so we get all their notifications, and they're very helpful.
And I think we should look forward to supporting whatever we can for the Friends of Mountain Pond, because if we can limit invasive species there, it also is limiting it from Columbia Lake, whether coming in by kayak or blue heron.
very good,
Yeah.
very good point. From that perspective, CFA, I'll follow up with you. It's a nominal $150 membership, annual membership. I think that's in our budget.
I'm sure we could move something around, make that happen.
For sake of time, I'd like to suggest a motion and, typically we go with committee reports and I don't know, and we can come back to this, Mike, if there is something that's pressing in regards to a permit review. But in moving forward, I'd like to suggest, and I'd like to make a motion for tonight, that we hold on committee reports and that we review committee reports and we come to a conclusion as a group and come to consensus. What are the standing committees that we want and need? And where should they be on the agenda? Because it seems that there are times when we can't get to the open business and some important things. As tonight, we have a dam control policy, water level editing, based on some things that happened last year, that we really need to start to review and make a decision by February for the Board of Selectmen to make a decision if they're going to change the dam water policy. Not only for the purpose of environmental reasons, but the purpose of trying to the best of our ability, maintain and secure people's structural docks, et cetera, on the water. So I'd like to suggest a motion that we skip committee reports tonight, come back to it if we have anything important from permit review. And that we move to open business and focus in on, at least on the lake water levels proposal that Henry and I have worked on over the past week. And then, any other, I would like to hear from you in open business. What are your priorities and what do you think we really need to focus on? Because I think we have a long list, but I think there has to be a way that we have to prioritize so that we can have good discussion, good debate, reach a consensus that typically is a vote. We all have a vote, each and every one of us, and then move forward. If not, I'm not sure we get through the laundry list all the time, so we need a way to prioritize. So if there's a second to it, I'd like a motion to skip the committee reports for this particular.
I'll second.
Move to open business. All in favor? There's no discussion. Great. Opposed? Henry, do you want to, or Mark, actually, you have the copies. I started with the history of, we made a mistake last year.
Yeah, well,
And it forced us to look at your policy.
it may date back a little further and we just continued it last year, but last year's mistake was we let it go to the end of our February meeting before we talked about it. And we really didn't get anything resolved and we ended up having some docks injured in private property problem because we were dealing with ice for the first time in 7 years. And well, one of the things we had set up before was to try to choreograph the best we can, getting the lake filled up by the summer season so that we don't have a low lake that fosters plant growth through light penetration, fosters erosion underneath stone walls and retaining walls, and a whole bunch of other environmental problems. And we were dealing with a period of time where we had lower spring rains for a number of years in a row that created a concern. And so we determined to start letting the water in earlier in the cycle, particularly in years when we didn't have any ice. And we didn't have any data, which we now have now, about, where docks were compared to where lake level was. And we had started letting it up too high and then had some ice redevelop and ended up with difficulties. And so what prompted this was trying to reconsider whether we should change that ad hoc decision that was made to let water come up, I think 3.6 inches, and as being too high or letting it in too far until the ice was completely out. In the process of doing that, Mary came up with some great data. There's one here, the colored page shows kind of the progression of the discussion on the various subjects. The color at the bottom shows her recent results.
You got a segment?
I don't think we printed that out.
Oh, maybe I've got them all here.
I've got them all.
So I don't have the bottom one, but I have all of those, so we can pass those around.
Or I may need you some leaders who have.
Sure, yeah, they're showing, when the water's down so far, how many docks are still in the water. So that's very helpful data to us. And then in the process of reviewing the gate policy, a few other things came out, including potentially a better organization of it, a little bit more of a statement of purpose, and also some warnings. It's a good idea to tell owners, when we tell them verbally when they come in here, that their docks are at their own risk and so forth, and we're not promising that we're ever gonna, this policy is ever gonna be able to protect them. And then Mary also had come up with some wording that's not in the draft yet, but from other lakes around that have done more with respect to this, which has some great ideas, and some protective ideas, that probably eventually should be, worked into our policy. But probably not in the short term, because in the short term, we're really worried about, giving the selectmen some guidance so that we can get a policy in place with regard to the ice we have on the lake now and how we should be monitoring the lake level when it's time for it to go out. Right now, it's being well monitored to keep it around the 5-6 level, as required by the policy in a better way than it has been done in past years. So we're happy with that. So as long as we're here and we've got ice as we have, and we're not looking to fill the lake, we've got time to try to put this together. But typically by mid-February, the ice is on its way out because the days have gotten longer, if not warmer, and the length of the day hasn't as much or more to deal with ice out than the ambient daily temperature. And so we'll want to have something in place because somewhere along the line, towards the end of February, early March, it's likely that we want to have the water come up higher than the 5-6 that is in place for the winter time.
And the 5-6 has been in place since 1990, and bringing the water level up even above that during the winter, and to no higher than 5 feet has been in place since 1990. The issue started, I think, at least this year when we were at 3-6. And the ice we thought was 2 inches was actually 4 to 6 inches. And it did damage, in particular, one dock. However, that dock in 40 years has been damaged 4 times. So we have to be careful that, we are making reasonable choices for the entire lake. I don't think we can take care of 5 docks. There are 191 on the lake. Jim?
Yeah, I just want to make a point. I mean, we did have some pretty dry springs for a good number of years, but ice damage to docks is nothing new. That used to happen almost every year.
Yeah.
On a consistent basis.
Yeah.
I mean, if you remember that, you go back a number of years, we used to get 2 feet of ice. And we have icebergs floating around from the wind. And so there was always dock damage. But we had a span of about 5 or 6 years where it was pretty much warm and also no very little rain in the spring. And
not much snow.
and all of a sudden, right, and very little, right,
Good.
snow melt.
Right.
So I think everybody got kind of, people have short memories. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, then after those 5 or 6 years, some damage, not even close to the amount of damage that used to happen. I mean, and everybody was in an uproar about it, but things didn't really change much. I mean, it was much worse early on
Jim,
than it is today.
I want to build on that. I interviewed Mark Coleman, who, as you all know, or some of you may not, was chairperson here, was on LMAC for a long time and managed the dam forever. We used to every once in a while get cranky at him because if he wanted to take the water too low. But he gave me all the data that he could recall. It's subjective, and said the same exact thing. And he frankly said, over 3 decades plus, if 5% of the docks are damaged, we did a hell of a job. We did a good job.
Right.
We can't manage to every dock. The town beach dock is 75 feet, 80 feet long. It's not out of the water now, and we're at 5-6.
Right.
We can't manage that. We have to come up with reasonable solutions and have people understand that there's risk.
Yeah, and part of that is also eventually putting something on our dock and seawall application.
Right.
When people are planning to build a dock and they want to they go out to the 20 feet that we allow, or they come in for an exception to go out to 35 feet. They've got to recognize the risk and what the policy is and where water level likely to be at certain times. And I think we can also do a little bit of fine tuning here, for the people that are looking into the crystal ball to make a decision. And there was comments last time when somebody's dock got destroyed that this was as clear as mud. Well, it isn't a clear science, and
It's not.
that's the point. But one of the things that can be taken into account in addition to water runoff and everything else is the condition of the ice. Ice can be small flows. It can be such that it's been sitting in the sun for 2 weeks and it may still be 3 inches thick, but it'll break if you throw a 1 pound rock on it, you know, and so when it goes ashore, it just breaks into a bunch of crystals and falls apart. So the concept of necessarily having to wait to complete ice out, we don't necessarily need to do that if we kind of give people some variation here. But I think the biggest issue is changing the 3'6" to be something like letting it come up like no more than 4 feet if there is any significant ice on the lake. And if you look at the dock guidance here, letting it come up to 4 feet would protect somewhere between 80 and 90% of our docks. And you know, I think that would be in line with what most people with docks would have an expectation for, and would allow us to at least get some kind of, I don't want to say head start, but a good start on getting the lake filled up again when we're approaching February and March. It may still have some ice floating around, or it goes and then it comes back.
I would suggest moving forward, and support Henry's thought. And so, you know, this is just a collation of a huge spreadsheet I have where I had 20 locations. And every other day I was going to 10 of those locations with my binoculars, with my measuring sticks, to say, where's the water level and where are these docks? So this is an estimation. It is not totally at 191 docks, but it is saying that 80% were literally out of water, inches away, up to many feet away from the water level. I would concur with Henry, and I would suggest 2 things. This material that you have tonight has been formatted for easier reading. And if it was mud, I think it was the formatting. It wasn't what's in this document. I think the major change we need to make is in section, what section is it, Henry? Where we put 8 ice cover conditions instead of 3.6, we did 4 feet, which would guide the Board of Selectmen this year. And in section 9, ice-free conditions, that the lake level could be adjusted to at least 4 feet below water level, baseline water level. Until the new ice sheet is no longer substantial if it comes back. If we were to recommend that to the Board of Selectmen, and we do have time for you to think about this. We're getting 4 inches, we're getting more docks out of water.
You're saying 6 inch, you're saying going 4 feet from.
Oh, that's right, thank you.
So you won't, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician.
That's okay, I just want to make sure, that's a,
Yeah.
personally, I think that's a lot.
The other area is section 16. Every lake drawdown document I could find, and you can find several online, have risk warning statements.
Right.
People need to know.
Great idea.
And of the 4 docks that were impacted that we were made aware of, 3 of the people who I've spoken with said, yes, we know this happens, we self-repaired it. We have one squeaky wheel who wants the town to repair. Which I don't think that's a reasonable solution when you're dealing with an art of trying to refill this lake.
Jim, what's your point? We were changing it from minus 3.6 to minus
4 feet.
4.
Yeah.
Well, it had provided a range before of 3, 6, and 4, so and 6 inches vertical, 6 inches vertical is, depending on the slope of the land, it can be a large distance horizontally along the.
Well, in
lake
certain
bottom.
coves.
Yeah.
Not in the deeper areas.
Yeah.
Actually, the
Yes.
western side of the lake, not as much as opposed
This
to.
is.
But I think,
Measured on the dam.
Yes,
yeah,
measured at the dam.
I just think we gotta be careful, we don't, we move the pendulum to one way. We don't wanna move it back too far the other way. I personally think we're better off in smaller increments, but again, everybody's gotta think about it, how they want, 6 inches is a lot.
Well, do we need to change it at all?
Well, I would come back to also say the 3.6 was a brainchild that I launched, whatever it was, without any data. It was just a seat of the pants number that we picked out in the first place. And
Well, this
We
is
used to
back
be
in
3-6 years.
nineteen ninety,
Well,
it was 3.6. In
Yeah.
2000.
yeah, but it was,
But in 18, you made it this.
but it was 3.6 after we were into March.
Yes,
Uh,
supposedly.
yes, and we were looking at.
No, after February, it wasn't as, now we're writing everything down. In those meetings there, 3.6 was the number that was used. And after mid-February, depending on the season and the temperatures and forecasts,
It's a judgment.
it was always done by field then, and I'm not saying that's the right way to go. But what I am saying is that, that number's been around for a long time. And I don't know the percentage of the docks back then, if the docks are longer now or not, or how it was. But there was always certain damage, especially on those, we haven't had 2 feet of ice, I can't remember, in a long time. But I do remember when it was like that. And those years, we still followed the same criteria. And quite frankly, we never had complaints. The only time we had complaints is when the lake didn't fill up.
Yeah,
That's when we had
well,
complaints.
that's
And we'll get plenty.
unintended
Yeah.
consequence of if we go too far back.
Exactly, and that's why
You'll have
I get a little concerned about, moving
Point.
too much, too fast. Because it's always, it's always gonna be worse.
Greg
Water
wants to
doesn't
get
come.
into
Wait,
Jeff.
who's, well, I got Jeff here and Greg. Greg, go for it, then Jeff.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I had my hand up, but I couldn't speak. I just a comment, all good stuff. And I just remember last year, there a lot of ice damage, right? And what I'm wondering is the timing of when the ice leaves, you have damage. So when the lake starts filling up, you got a very small window to fix your dock. And I just, wondering if we could formalize something that if your post breaks or something, it could be an administrative approval, quick approval, rather than waiting for the next LMAC meeting.
We have that done.
We have an emergency.
We had an emergency approval on the application and we did that for,
A couple times.
well, we did
Well,
that.
I'm just
Robinson.
saying, I don't think it's clear to the community. It might not be. I don't know.
Okay.
I just wanted to raise that.
We can always communicate better, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Greg. That.
because you have maybe a month to fix it.
Yeah.
And we got to make it
And
easy
I
on
think
people to
we
be
need
able to do that.
communicate better. Jeff?
So I noticed with the TRC that he had his maps with the plant light.
Yeah,
stuff,
that
and-
metric.
But he also did a depth chart.
Yes,
Okay, would there be a way to determine a suitable depth based off of the lake on those areas with an average to establish a finite window for a level? Okay,
Yeah.
because really now you have depths, a more accurate depth, topography of the bottom of the lake.
right.
So now when you start dropping the water levels, you'll know where those water levels should be. Okay,
Correct.
So now.
Then you have to compare the docks, where
Correct.
docks.
Well,
Yeah.
and I
Which
would
was
like
kind of
to,
my,
With that data,
Yeah.
because that was never there. Whenever I'm out fishing, I'm going by my overall general impression of my experience of fishing.
Your knowledge.
Seeing that map there with those contour lines, I think, if we would get a better idea of that, that will give us more data to play with to better establish an appropriate level. What, maybe 4 feet is too much to take down. Maybe we should be at 3.6, or maybe, it's just looking at that information.
I think we, that map.
More accurate
That we have now.
than what we've had, and I think they've got that information there that we should be able to tap into.
I don't think they came down enough to get that. I think that they might have brought it back to maybe, from the map that I was looking at, the number of different zones they had, they only had four or so, and maybe they have more than they showed on the map, but it wasn't.
They now have 80 data points around the lake,
No, but I mean, in terms of.
but what they're
Whether they could get close to the shore, more so that they have a 3-foot line or a 4-foot line. But the other thing that data will help us understand is if we go to 4 feet, how many more gallons of water do we have to get into the lake? If we go to 3.6, how many more gallons of water do we have to go into the lake? And that I think is very, as Jeff pointed out, very helpful in determining how long the lake is gonna take to fill.
I like Jeff's idea, because there's some modeling that we could do, that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And one of the criteria could be, I'm just making this up, but that you assume that your dock is 20 feet, because that's regulation length, and anything over that is at your peril. If you're grandfathered, we're grandfathered, our dock is longer than 20 feet, because it was grandfathered.
Yeah.
But that's on us then.
Well, it's on everybody, whether you're 20 feet or 10 feet.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if you're modeling, then you model for you've got your depth, and you model for a 20-foot dock.
5 docks that aren't out of water are all like 70 feet.
Are all 70 feet?
They're in that range.
Yes.
One of them is
So
237.
Yeah.
The town, I have them.
I don't wanna not have the lake fill up in the spring because of 5 docks that are 70 feet long that don't want.
And yes, they're grandfathered, we respect that, but I think we have to be reasonable.
They have.
You make a good.
But it's still.
I like that idea.
For this year, understanding that we have to take some time, is there a drawdown level? Right now, it's -4, right?
Well,
No, we were proposing.
Yes.
We're supposing -4.
Or not,
Well,
we're not
now
all,
it's-
it's not all in one.
Excuse me, now it's -3.6.
To 4.
All right, is there a motion to consider? Do we need to discuss more?
What motion?
To let the Board of Selectmen, and the Department of Public Works understand that as we fill the lake, when ice is on the lake, that we only go to minus whatever. I'm not saying for work, the data suggests,
What is the current, which
Yeah,
one of
what's-
these
what's
is
the
the
current?
current
Is it between-
guidance?
well, this is.
Is this in 4?
I would say 2018 is the current, because 2021 has not been approved by the Board of Selectmen. In 2020, they did approve the 2018 one. That's what Jennifer found.
So this is not on the record.
This is not on the record. That was a draft that we drew up and we walked away from, or tabled for a bit.
So what's wrong with the 2018 guidance as it stands?
Well, we're allowing it to go to 3.6.
Yeah.
But if you look at that, it says you're allowed to go to that, but only in the case that ice reforms
Right,
on more than half the lake and lasts more than 72 hours. And, I'm not gonna disagree with that, but I'm saying we could let it come up to 4 feet. While there is,
still ice on the lake.
still ice on the lake.
And
That it may be punky, it may be more than a half a foot, I mean, it may be more than half the lake or, whatever. So that's, under
But hey,
the,
Henry,
yeah.
yeah, so if there's ice on half the lake, doesn't the wind blow it around? And typically doesn't it go to the east side of the lake? So those people would be more affected?
It depends on the effect of the island, but yes, if there's only ice on less than the whole part of the lake, it does, the wind does blow it. And it
Yeah.
does, start to break up usually on one shore or another. And that's why if it's at, something, below 4 feet or that,
Yeah,
it
right.
breaks up on the rocks and not on, the docks, because otherwise it comes in as a battering ram and just
Right.
takes out the docks. A lot of docks get messed up by frost heave, independent of, where the lake level is.
Ours
But
does every year.
I guess I'm just wondering if the half the lake is a little bit too much.
too much, well, we could certainly reduce it.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
We're never gonna please 100%. And Mark Pullman made that statement.
Yeah, it was always, February 15th was the date that they start the.
Let's start thinking about it.
I mean, that's when, at February, that's when the board would start talking about it. March 1st was when we had our meeting, or the first,
Unless it was
And
obvious.
that's when we kind of, all talk through it and vote, but the 15th was always the date that it was brought up. And knowing that the next meeting is all about water level.
The basic change is number 8 from where we are on the present policy, because number 8 deals with where you can let the dock level go or the water level go, depending on ice conditions before you get the ice out. And there's 3-6, after you get the ice out, and if you were at 4 feet, you're gonna start up to 3-6. And you may get close to 3-6 or whatever, and suddenly an ice sheet forms again. And then you don't wanna have to drop it back to 4, necessarily, so that's kind of where, paragraph 9 goes, we're talking about ice, what happens when you have ice-free conditions and the ice reforms. And I think that's the place for the 3-6. But if we're gonna try to start to let water come up in and get above 5-6 down while there's still ice on the lake, then we have to have something between 5-6 and 3-6 on an interim basis. And it's really number 8 here is designed for letting the water in early after January 1. We may have a period where we have had in the past, the ice completely went out by January 20 and never came back. And you want to start to let the water in. You don't want to have to wait till March 1 and see whether the ice reforms or not.
Mary, in your research, you're saying back years ago, it was January 1st? And I don't remember that date being,
that was
when we were even allowed to pull it up.
that one in the 18 or 20s and 21.
It was low, and that was probably a result of low water, low snow. And no ice, and also not a lot of spring stuff,
Right.
rains, right, like that, but. We've, in February, like I said, February 15th is when we started, deciding to shut the gate and let it come up to that 3-5.
Okay,
And usually by the time, because the meeting wasn't till March.
so this says on or about March 1st, and this is the actual document, 1990 to 2006 and 2018. So if we want to say something, do we want to say on or about mid-February?
Because that's when we used to check the ice, if there was thick ice, we'd go out there and, somebody would core drill it, or we'd get information from the fishermen or whatever, and that way, March 1st, we could say, let's start bringing it up, the ice is soft, it's white ice, and we know, it should break up pretty quick, you know what I mean, and we'd shut the gate and it would start coming,
I don't disagree with that. All we're trying to do is move that date back.
Yeah.
And we were also trying to, when we did this, make it flexible, because it could be mid-February based on the climate of the particular year, it could be February 1, it could be January 20, so that's why we kind of put the January 1 date in there, not as a line in the sand that we have to start letting the water.
Well, I agree with that.
But you can start looking at it at that time.
So let me try to bring this to some consensus based on our timing. Are we at a point, at least on an interim basis, as we continue to study this and perhaps move forward with even more data, to say spring refill on or about mid-March, mid-February, and to say that the maximum lake to rise to 4 feet.
I think that's fine for this year, because
For this year.
because we've got ice already, we're not looking at a time where the ice is gonna be.
Yeah, we gotta melt, or, we have to bring the forecast into this. We're at 5 inches right now in the middle of the lake. I asked that.
Yes, because I've been out with them.
So, we're gonna face this year.
Oh, so you can't bring it up, you're saying, can't bring it up to -4
With,
until after.
yeah, with a significant amount of ice on the lake.
Yeah.
Until, we're saying during March, when the lake surface is essentially ice-free, the gate is closed, allowing the lake to return. Well, at mid-March, or mid-February, you're suggesting we start to make that decision, and in March, then where is the ice?
Right.
It's 2 weeks, ice could be gone,
Yes, exactly.
but
Or does the rain?
but do we need to make an adjustment? And if we do, is there a motion?
Well, are you asking us to approve this language that you've given us, or?
Well, I think if you look what we're trying to say, if you look at the chart here, and you look under 2018, under the spring refill line across, it says each year on or about March 1, allow the lake to rise to a maximum level of 3.6 below before ice out. So I think what we're saying is each year on or about mid-February, allow the lake to rise to a maximum level of 4 feet before ice out.
And specific to the language, the only thing we did was reformat this because it was terribly difficult. Everything in red was the reformat. We put titles to each paragraph.
Oh, it's fine, but do you want us to, we haven't seen this yet, so do you want us to review it, do you want us to approve it?
Well, we have until February, so my suggestion would be review it. Let's come back, let's have a motion in February, and let's be ready to tell the board.
Right, and on page 6 where it says insert and various other things here, that really needs to be worked in, and we'll work it in over time, but just look at the concepts, and when we come back with the February draft or the circulated before February, that'll be worked into it.
So we don't have to approve this one tonight?
There is no need to approve it tonight. Let's table it and carry it to February, but an action has to take place at the February meeting.
So our homework is to review this document and review this. To come prepared to vote
Was that
February.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you've got to have.
Everybody got that?
Agenda for the meeting after.
So, let me conclude.
You're gonna
this.
email it out, right?
I will email it out, Greg.
Thank you.
And everybody will get it in the next 2 days, okay? What are we doing? Yes, in the next day. Let me conclude with this. Our time is done for today. Obviously.
I have a permit.
You have a permit?
Mike Gilbert.
Did you do this site review?
I did.
Oh. When? It's still interesting.
The Lynch's, yes. So it's 46 Ridley Road. Yeah. They have a 20-foot by 4-foot dock
I'm familiar with
that
it.
they want to replace.
Totally the same.
It's totally the same position, same size. And there's nothing more than that. I mean, everything is.
And that,
I think you're administrative approval.
that's an administrative. And just come to the meeting with a motion that we have an administrative approval to replace the dock and light. Do you want to put that motion out?
The last one we had like that, though, we were way to the EOS. So why is this one different?
Yeah.
Which one was that?
Light needs to say.
Solder.
We had to do the letter. I used to do the letter to the BOS.
Oh, okay, so we.
Okay. That's it, LMAC administrator.
Okay.
And that's in your official. To be formal, you should probably say motion to administratively approve. Same like that.
So I propose a motion to approve the dock replacement at 46 Ergoning Road. As an administrative. As an administrative.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Does that include the stairs?
No,
That's
That's a different application.
That's a different.
That's Mike Robush.
That's a different.
Oh,
Oh, no.
was emailed
Yeah,
out.
that was my proposal.
I don't know.
Let's vote on this one, and then we can talk.
All in favor?
Wait.
Wait, this is the Lynch's dock at 46 or down.
Right.
I'm going to recommend the table because we already approved it a year plus ago. LMAC, not wetlands. And wetlands is gonna do an administrative.
Okay, so you think it's done?
Yes, I talked to Savannah.
Okay, well, on wetlands, it's an administrative.
Put something different.
I.
But which one are you approving? Because he gave three options. The one that was not approved and then.
Into the, into the.
Judy Ortiz was at the site of the decision.
Okay, I'll move that we recommend that the time frame for that permit that was previously issued, be restarted. Because the permits are good for 2 years, if it was issued 2 years ago, it needs to.
It wasn't 2 years ago, it was last year.
Okay, last year, well, so move that the time frame for that permit start from the time that he gets wetlands permission.
Okay,
And could you just make a motion that LMAC approved last year? The stairs you wanted, just so
so
it's. something-
motion on the table is that LMAC approved, the Dobush right away. LMAC did not approve it, the Board of Selectmen approved. Yeah, LMAC recommended that we not, the Board of Selectmen approved the stairs, so LMAC doesn't have to make a motion. That was a BOS. That they turned down,
Okay,
so.
okay, so that's.
So he should go back to the board of selectmen and ask for an extension of time. So he should- So
And you can do that in the February.
It's gonna plop it in right away. So,
Okay, so it's up to the board of selectmen.
correct.
And if you wanted to change it from the wider stair to a narrow stair, you.
They wanna do it,
Okay,
because they were gonna permit.
I just want to be clear. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. First off, I just wanna, before we have a motion to close, thank you all. I need to kind of get my arms around this in terms of the responsibilities that were issued and how do we make this happen and work together as a team in the most efficient and effective way. To do what our mission was, just to protect and preserve the lake. So thank you again. I may come back with some thoughts and suggestions on how we can adjust our agenda for that to happen. And we'll present those to you in February.
the February meeting will also have further discussion of the annual report and their recommendation.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Thank you.
At what time? 9 o'clock?